Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks. Today the Hungry Gamer is back with another list. And today I'm finally going to jump in and do my top 10. I know I usually do top 8, but there's so many of these games that I like so much, I extended it to a top 10. My top 10 dungeon crawl / adventure games. And before I tell you anything about what any of them are, I'm going to say that this is a list that is purely subjective. And what I mean by that, I know all criticism is subjective, right? But what I mean by that is this is purely the games that I like to play the most, from number 10 up to number 1. I will also say that the numbers 5 through 10, or maybe even 4 through 10, might change on any given day, kind of the order that I put them in based on, well, my mood. The 1, 2, and 3 are pretty locked down. The 1 and 2 I'll say are really, really close, and who am I kidding? These all might move around at any given time. And at the end of the video, I'm also going to talk about 3 other games that potentially could make their way into the list in the future. I just either 1, don't have them yet, or 2, just haven't played them enough to really know where I think that they're going to land. And I do hope that this video will create conversation. I want to know what you think. I want to know what games that you think are the best that maybe aren't on my list, that I don't mention at all. How would you change the order of the games that I have on the list, or the games I do have? Just tell me what you think about them. What do you love about them? Why did I actually get something right? Whatever it may be. So I really hope to get a bunch of comments on this one down in the, well, in the comments, as it were. And so before I jump in, there are a whole bunch of games that aren't on this list that were considered. And these are games that people have talked to me about for forever. And I know you're probably wondering, were they even considered? And so I'm just kind of going to jump through this, and I'm going to talk about some games. Machina Arcana, Perdition's Mouth, Dungeons of Infinity, Sword and Sorcery, Gloomhaven. These are all games that I have enjoyed. Some of them I've done reviews on, and they've been actually very positive reviews, but they didn't make my top 10. I like them, I enjoy them, not my top 10. Along with that, Destinies from Lucky Duck Games, I've only played once, so the jury's out on that. I know some people say that's not really a dungeon crawl adventure game. It's more of just a story. I don't know. I've only played once. Can't say if that would be on the list or not. Dungeon Crusade. Never played. So can't speak to that. But hopefully that covers some of the big ones that people are going to talk about that just aren't on there. I will also say there's a couple of games that I decided didn't quite fit into this. That would be Ratcatcher. It just didn't quite feel to me like what I think of as an adventure or dungeon crawl game, even though it does have so many of the hallmarks of that. But, so that one I just did not consider. And the same thing for this right behind me, Heroes of Tennefer, which I love. Don't really consider it a dungeon crawl adventure game because it doesn't have the dungeon, as it were. So, let's jump right in to my number 10. And I'm immediately starting with a controversy for myself, and that is Hellboy the game. Now, this one's is number 10 for me. It might very quickly move up, and this is another one because I just haven't played a ton of it. I've played a decent amount of it. Actually, I went back and played it quite a bit before the latest campaign ended because I wanted to see if I wanted to jump in and get more stuff. And this is a game that, well, I love that it's a relatively small footprint. The tiles are small. There's not a ton of tiles that you're searching through, and the tiles themselves don't really matter that much. It's not the weird shapes you're putting together. And I like that about it. The art's very cool. The whole Hellboy, Mike Mignola art aesthetic is just very cool to me. I like the characters. I like the kind of the world building. But most importantly, what I really enjoy about it is the dice. The way the dice combat works. This idea that you're rolling dice and you can upgrade your dice and you're better at certain things, but it's all done so very simply. And there's gear and things like that, but it's all just simple. But it allows for really strategic play and lets you do some really cool cinematic type things. So, number 10 for me, at the moment, is Hellboy. I like it enough that I went in and I backed the new stuff and I'm probably going to pick up some of the expansions that I don't have in the Pledge Manager whenever that actually opens up. So, that's number 10. Number 9 is one that I actually do not have in my collection anymore. and that is Galaxy Defenders, which is kind of the precursor to Sword and Sorcery. It is this aliens invading Earth, and you are the Galaxy Defenders, you're soldiers that are going out to try to stop them. And this was one of the first dungeon crawls that I owned. And I had to eventually sell it because I finished it and I didn't have the money or the space to get the expansions. I kind of wish that I had them. Now that I have a little more space, I would love to play through that whole series again. I really, really liked Galaxy Defenders, a really fun game. I only played through the base game. I think it's out of print now, so it's a little bit hard to find. So again, I regret that I sold it for a song, but Galaxy Defenders, just one of the first real dungeon crawl games I ever played. I played it at a con, someone had just gotten off Kickstarter, and it's just a blast. Character progression is good, it's fun, it's solid, it's relatively quick to set up when it comes to just two big tiles you're going to put together. The AI is good, it's clean, and it's just, there's not a ton of fiddle to the game, which I really appreciate. So Galaxy Defenders is my number 9. Now, number 8 is one that should not be a surprise on this list. It might be a surprise that it's as low as number 8, and that is Alter Quest. And I have all of Alter Quest, and it's a fun game. It takes the Blacklist Games Sadler Brothers modular deck system and it puts it into this dungeon crawl adventure style game that always has the same map, because it's just a broad map. It's a huge map you put out there, and you're just going to use some of the rooms you kind of move through, and as you move into the rooms you discover what is in there. So there's a lot of discovery going on. But what I like about it the most is each character is so very different. It is so very different, each character, the way they play, and they all feel very powerful. And it only comes in at number 7 for me because it's a lot. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to track. Like, I love the idea of playing 4 characters, but I can't. I tap out at 2 characters. And so I can't get all the characters I want in there. Like, I really, really want to do the first campaign. I haven't done the first campaign yet, and do that with this first 4. But it's hard because playing 4 characters is so much. There's cards, it spreads everywhere. There's so much going on. There's so much stuff that you're tracking. So many different tokens that you're going to put out that do something different for each deck that's out there. And it's a lot. It's fun, but it's a lot. And so that brings it down the list for me a little bit. Even though they have done something that I really love. There are a lot of the things that you get are just generic tokens, generic supply token. And you can use a supply to give yourself a boost. And up to you, whatever that is. Maybe you think that's, heck, maybe it's a bag of flour that you're just smashing and it's going into the face of the bad guy so you have a bit of advantage. It's whatever you imagine it to be. I like that, but there's still a lot of stuff going on. And because these tokens can do kind of anything, they wind up becoming almost their own type of little bit of fiddle that you have. You have to remember, what is this token actually doing? But that said, it's a really fun game. I played through the expansion campaign completely, a whole bunch of other games, and like I said, I really want to get back into it and do this other campaign. It's on my list of things to do this summer. I painted all those characters. It's a fun game. I really do enjoy it. And that moves into number 6. And number 6 for me is the one that is the most adventure of these. The least dungeon crawl, most adventure game type. And that is Aftermath from Plaid Hat Games and Jerry Hawthorne. And just a great story in this. And this one that I hadn't finished, I got probably halfway through and I had to put the pause on because my wife was kind of interested in playing, but we're also playing through Mice and Mystics, and she kind of wants to finish that one before we go into another one. So, and Mice and Mystics is another one that didn't quite make the list. I went with Aftermath because I think Aftermath does things that are just, cooler. It has the adventure book. You're playing, all the maps are in the book, so it's so quick to get the setup. And it has this very cool combination of cards and dice, where you're using the cards to kind of give yourself boosts, and then you're going to roll the die also in addition. And I'm sure that it still has its own level of swinginess to it, but it doesn't feel as swingy. It feels like you have more agency with what you're doing. And the story is good. It's interesting. I really want to know what happened in this world, and I don't because I haven't gotten to go back and finish it. So Aftermath is my number 6 game. Now, moving into the top 5, and I will say, for the moment, this is the last one on this list that I really think is subject to could just drop out of the list completely if I were to do this list again. All the ones above this, I do not foresee falling out of my top 10 anytime soon. All the ones I just named below could come and go, can move up and down a lot. But this is the last one that might move, and this is the one that's probably going to be the most controversial. And for all of you who've already been yelling at me because I said Gloomhaven did not make my top 10, here we have Jaws of the Lion. And I do mark it as separate from Gloomhaven just because of some of the stuff that's been pulled out of it, that's been streamlined. You don't have the character retirement, a whole bunch of things that you just don't have that makes this a faster experience, particularly, again, the adventure book map setup. I just think that really, really makes it work for me. But more importantly, because it's the only one of these that I'm playing regularly with a group. There's 4 of us, and we get together and we play this game. Now, things have been happening in the summer, so we haven't been playing lately, but we have a regular recurring night to play Jaws of the Lion. And I'll also say that the story in Jaws of the Lion is more cohesive and stronger than it is in vanilla Gloomhaven. But with that, the real joy of Gloomhaven is just the card play and that top and bottom of each card, and you're switching at the last minute and trying to get your status effects, and it's a little more puzzly than you think of as your normal dungeon crawler. And along with that, it's a small box, and I really appreciate that. And it does one of my favorite things in dungeon crawls, is when you have a mini for your hero and you got standees or tokens for the bad guys. Because I don't want to paint the bad guys. There, I said it, I don't want to do it, but I want the minis painted. I enjoy painting the minis. Usually if it's a game I love, I'll go and I'll just do a wash and dry brush of the bad guys just so they pop a little bit. But give me a standee. I'm so happy with it. And I love that it does that. So for all of those reasons it comes to, and that's why it is my number 6. Then we're on to my number 5. Now this one lands at number 5 because I really enjoyed playing through it when I first got it. And I haven't gone back to it much. And the reason I haven't gone back to it is because the recent Kickstarter that they did, which I backed, they're introducing a lot more for the cooperative solo play experience, which is going to enhance the experience that I really enjoyed of the base game. And that is Arena the Contest. And you see I'm just holding up the art book, which they were kind enough to send me because, well, it's a lot of big boxes and it's pretty heavy. And what I really like about Arena is I like the campaign mode. I like there's little puzzles in there that you have to solve, and depending on what you've solved or which branch you've taken through the narrative, what you've chosen to fight, what you've chosen to do changes things down the road. There's different endings that you can get, and there's so many different characters. And in the core game, advancing your characters it's very simple. It's just a little bits of math and so on. And you only have a few different cards and abilities that you're able to play on any given turn, which I do like because it makes the game move. It keeps it cooking, and all the characters do feel different. They do play differently, and I certainly appreciate that. But what this new stuff's going to do is it's going to make it a little more complex as far as playing characters and what you're doing and choices, what cards you're able to play, and so on and so on and so on. And so all of that I'm really excited about. And so because I think the game is going to be better when the new stuff comes out, also it has another 80 hours of campaign stuff, I've been holding off on playing it. But it takes up a lot of space on my shelf, and I have no desire to get rid of it. It is a fun game. I like it. I love the way it plays. I love the speed of it. It uses a D20, which at first I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so swingy. But the way it's set up, it's set up in a way that you're always doing something, even if you biff. And I like that because it still takes that D20, which kind of gives that real crunchy RPG vibe to it, but it makes it to where it's not so swingy and damaging. And so because of that, because of all the different characters, the building of your party, and the story, and the promise of more story, so much more story, and the promise of a delightfully fun, enjoyable, more crunchy experience of the card play and the choice of abilities, that one lands at my number 5, and I'm really excited to actually go back and play the thing. I'm just waiting for the new stuff to come in. Now we get into the top 4. And to me, right now, these top 4 are a step up. As much as I like, and I said that Arena is not leaving this list anytime soon, but right now, and Arena may join this. It may join this group of ones that I cannot foresee getting rid of once the new stuff comes in. But the step up right now, number 4, and I'm going to say number 4 and number 3 were very, very tight for me. very, very tight. And these are ones that they could flip-flop back and forth, but these were very, very tight. But here we go. Number 4 is Infinity Defiance. And this one's hard to get. This is hard to get. They did a limited Kickstarter. It's not in retail. I know that they're having another Kickstarter for more non-core Infinity. Infinity is a tabletop miniatures game stuff. And I'm hoping that they're going to do a reprint so you can get your hands on this. Because this one, to me, the gameplay is great. And I've been doing a playthrough on my channel. Again, I haven't finished the whole thing, but the story is strong. It's not the best story out there. Actually, I think currently I'm going to give Aftermath and my number 3 probably have the best story out there. But it's a good story, it's strong, and most importantly, the way the dice play works. It is one where you make your dice pool, and you do also make a dice pool for the enemy, and you're going to roll them. And yes, you have, hits and shields that are going to block each other, but then there's other symbols, and depending on the character you have, and depending on the gear that you have, they call them switches. So you're able to activate these abilities and do all kinds of different things. And so it makes every time you roll the dice, it's interesting. And you're often making choices of, I could put a status effect on this one, or I could not do the status effect and just do a little extra damage now and hope that by the time this one activates, I'm going to get to kill it first. Or maybe I'm afraid it's going to activate before I get to go again, so I'm going to put a status effect on it to help deal with that and mitigate what it can do. And it's very, very clever. It's very fun. The way that the characters can grow and the abilities you can get, again, they're unique, they're fun, they're interesting. There's not too many choices that you have to make, but there are real hard choices that you're making. Now, I will say kind of on the flip side, kind of the negatives here is all the minis are metal. But like with Jaws of the Lion, they also come with tokens. Just little tokens for all of them. And so for me, I put together and painted the heroes, and then I just use the tokens for everybody else. So I haven't even put together the other minis because for me, I don't need that. It's not exciting to me. But it does mean the game's a little bit expensive, and it's aftermarket. So it's harder to get, it's a harder one to find. Hopefully there will be another chance to get it on Kickstarter. I don't have the expansion that comes with it, which adds a few missions and more importantly adds a kind of a random scenario generator. I'm really hoping I'm able to get a hold of it. Who knows? I don't know if I'll be able to get a hold of it. But right now, still, with all of that, this is number 4. It is really a fun, challenging, very challenging game. So I really do enjoy Infinity Defiance. Okay, moving into the home stretch here. Number 3. Now, number 3, I'm not going to physically show you why, because it's big, but it's right up here. You can't see what it is, but it is Madara Act 1. To me, this one, along with Aftermath, best story out there. And it does very similarly to Infinity Defiance. It has that same style of dice play. You're going to make your dice pool, and you're going to roll the dice, and you have the same thing. They don't call them switches. They're just abilities that get activated when you're defending or when you're attacking. It's the same thing, and it makes the rolling of the dice its own little mini game, and it makes it exciting, and it makes it fun. But mostly it's because there's so much story and it's so interesting, and it does a really clever thing where it uses a red reveal tile and you're seeing new things and you have no idea what's coming, and there's so much discovery in the game. Along with that, I think the characters are well developed and so on and so on. Now, on the kind of the flip side of it, and I had to eat a little bit of crow because I hadn't played through enough, and because I was sent this game, I didn't actually back it, I did not realize the depth of some of this. So for me, on the other side, negative is some of the optional buys that you can get. There's a bunch of, I'm going to call them pinup style art that you can get, which for me, I don't like it. It's not for me. I think this game being kind of set in the anime genre, that comes with it its own amount of problematic things that do come with the anime genre. And what I will say is, this is a little bit of a correction from my review. In the core box so far I think it's dancing on the line in the core box of everybody is ridiculously dressed and somewhat sexualized. A little bit more the women than the men. But it's kind of on the line to where I say, okay, I think it's going pretty well. Now, when you start adding in some of the other stuff, It's full on pinup style, and it's not for me. And it does it's stuff that makes me uncomfortable to play with. Now, might not make you uncomfortable. You might love it. That's totally cool. You do you. But there is that there. But in the core box, which is what I have, in the core box, I have not come across anything that made me want to close the book, not let anybody see that I have it, because I felt like I'm a middle school boy with a lingerie magazine or something. Like nothing like that's come across in the core box. And on the flip side, I think the art looks really good. The monsters are cool. The characters are well rendered. I like the miniatures are good. All this stuff. I really am enjoying playing the game a lot. Really, really like it. It's so clever. The gameplay is so tight, so fun. It might become too much to manage playing solo with 4 characters later on. I don't know. It hasn't gotten there yet, but I'm excited to get there and find out, and excited to play Acts 2 and Acts 3. Now, we're coming to the next ones. 1 and 2 are 2 more that, again, I had a hard time placing. I went back and forth. Which one do I like where? Which one do I like more? And so on. And it came down to me to the speed of the game and brain burniness of the game, which is why I ranked them 1 and 2. And so, if you know me, you know that I always will default to a simpler, faster game for me. That's just me. I like brain burning games, but I will more often gravitate towards one that's a little bit simpler. So that's how I determined my number 1 and my number 2, because I really like both of these games. So my number 2 dungeon crawl adventure game is Dungeon Alliance. Now, with the caveat, you gotta have all of it. Well, maybe you don't need the character expansion and the deeper dungeon expansion. Maybe you don't need that, but I think you do. Which does make the game a little bit pricey. It makes it a little bit pricey because you do need the expansion, I think, and you definitely need the Adventure Pack expansions. Without the Adventure Pack expansions, this game is not in my top 10 dungeon crawl. At all. I think if you're looking at it as a competitive game without any of that stuff, it's interesting. But if you're looking at it for solo or 2-player, and again, I would not recommend playing this with more than 2, because it's a long game. Playing solo is a long game. This is the longest game on my list here. Maybe the longest dungeon crawler I have, period. It takes a long time to get through a game because it's so puzzly and it's so brain burning, and you're only going to get 4 activations each game with each of your characters, so you better make the most of it. And you're building up your deck, you're getting certain cards, and you're adding more cards to your deck, and it's so much fun to build these characters up and then figure out how it is you're going to solve the puzzle of the game, because again, you know what is out there for the most part. You don't open a door without knowing what's going to be in there. You know what the bad guys can do. You know literally what they are going to do because you can see the AI card. And I really like that puzzle nature. I really like that Euro-ish vibe. To me, this is the most Euro-ish dungeon crawler out there on the market. And it also does a thing that I really love. It doesn't have minion minis. It just has tokens. And you put it down and you flip them over, and so you know they've activated. It even has their stats right on there. You have the artwork, and it makes the game, one, more portable, it makes it quicker to play, and you just have the minis, which again, I really, really like. Now, on the flip side, like I said, it is a long game, there's a lot of thinking going on, and it doesn't feel like any other dungeon crawler that you've played. You're doing hardcore deck building, and it's really, really puzzly. Much more puzzly than it is dice chucking. There's only 1 die you ever roll, and only 2 things ever roll those dice. So there's not a lot of, it doesn't have that same feeling that other games do. But when you start adding in the adventure packs, what it does is it gives you a story, and it's a loose story because you're drafting cards. And as you're drafting these cards, you're going to find out what happened to the missing adventurers, or what's going on in the deep underground, or whatever it may be, whichever one you're doing. And so you're just getting kind of the skeleton, the scaffolding of this story, and you're figuring it out as you go through what is the story. So it's a loose story, but chasing down those cards and making the choice, do I want to draft one of these cards now? Or do I want to draft something that's going to help me right away? Because sometimes you draft those cards and they don't actually help you. They just advance the story and will give you access to stuff later on. Really, really enjoy it. Wonderful, wonderful game. Highly, highly recommended. I had a great time doing a online cross-channel playthrough with Baron to meet me at the table of this particular game in one of the adventure packs. Just really, really fun. Now, that brings us to my number one game, my number one dungeon crawler. And now, before I reveal this, this is one that a lot of you are going to disagree with me with. And so I'm just going to fold back to what I said of this is just the game that I like to play the most. This is a game that is not perfect at all, but I like to play it the most. And I've played through the campaign 2.5 times. And my wife likes playing this one because it is lighthearted. It has a strong story. Again, not the best story, but it has a strong story to it. It is lighthearted, it is whimsical, and the dice are fun. And that is Wander the Cult of Barnacle Bay. And I really like this game. Like I said, it's not perfect. It does really cool stuff with initiative. Initiative is so cool. It reminds me a bit of the Mice and Mystics initiative tracker, how it's going to change every time there's going to be fighting going on, but it takes it maybe half a step further and adds bonuses based on where you are in the initiative. So there becomes reasons to move yourself around in the initiative to get bonuses to protect yourself or hit harder or move faster or whatever. It is. Really, really clever. It does something else that I really like, where each time you play, you start over with 0 experience each level of the campaign. So each time you play, you're rebuilding yourself in a way that best fits what's happening in the moment. And that is fun to me because you're never locked into something. On the flip side, you're starting over at 0 every single time. And that may be good, may be bad. But for me, I enjoy that. And the diversity of characters is huge. If you got the stretch goals, it's not as huge if you don't have the stretch goals. In fact, you only get 5 characters without it, but you get the stretch goals, you got a whole bunch more. And there's a couple more that you can just buy. But if you have those other characters, there's such great diversity, and they all do feel different. Even if many times you're kind of doing the same thing, it might be just an extra reroll or something like that. But it really works for me. And the models are cool, they're fun, it's this anthropomorphic world, which I always think that's a blast. I love the anthropomorphic animals, they're so much fun to me. And it does one of the other things that I really enjoy that a lot of dungeon crawlers do nowadays is the enemies have set stats. You just look at the card, except for the bosses, you look at the card and this is what they're going to do. You know what they're going to do, you know the kind of damage they're going to do, and it's, the damage stacks up more and more as more of them are hitting you, and you're only rolling a dice pool for yourself. When you're attacking, you roll dice. When you are defending, you roll dice just based on you, and you're trying to get there. And the best thing about it, though, is it uses one of my favorite mechanics of exploding dice. I love exploding dice. If you roll the Bamf symbol, it's not Bamf, that's Nightcrawler, but whatever, you get it, you get to add a die. And it has that fun, ridiculous moment that you can start out rolling 2 dice, and you just keep rolling these Bamf symbols, and then suddenly you've rolled 12 dice and just blasted something into the next century, and it's so much fun. And I just really enjoyed. Along with it, it has this huge stack of event cards that anytime you go into the darkness, you're going to be flipping over one of those cards. It might be good, it might be bad, it might be horrible, it might do nothing. And you never know what it's going to be. Now, on the flip side, I wish that there was more scenarios that had different objectives to it. There's 1 or 2 where you're like racing to do something or whatever it may be. So I wish there was a little more of those, and I'm very hopeful for the expansion when it comes out. I think it's supposed to hit Kickstarter maybe Q4 this year. I'm hopeful for what it adds, the new stuff. But I really enjoy this game. Like I said, I played through 2.5 times completely. I will probably play through it again. I definitely am pulling it out on occasion just to do one-off scenarios. I really enjoy the game. It's just straight up fun. And that's why it lands at the number 1. I enjoy the characters, I enjoy what's going on, and it's just plain fun. It is just fun to play. Is it mechanically the most unique thing out there? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I don't care, because it makes me happy every time I pull it out. So, there you have it, folks. That is my top 10. I can feel you through the screen coming from the future saying I am wrong. Mostly about Gloomhaven. Or perhaps saying, where's Shadows of Brimstone? Never played Shadows of Brimstone. So I can feel that going on. Please let me know what your thoughts are on this list down in the comments. And I'm just going to conclude with 3 games that could possibly, I think, make their way into my top 10 in the future. And I'm going to start with the least likely to do that and then move up to the most likely to do that. So first off, there is Stygian Society, and that's kind of sitting up there. I got all of that. And that is a abstracted combat cube tower based game. I've played 3 or 4 times, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. I don't think it's a top 10 game for me. I don't think it is. But it is intriguing. I am thinking about it. So it could sneak its way into the top 10 depending on how I feel about it when I play it in the future. It's a long game, interesting game. Now these next 2, I feel like have a very good chance to eventually be in my top 10. One of them I have played the prototype of, and I made some content on it. It hasn't arrived yet from Kickstarter, and they've made huge changes to it since I played it. But possibly sneaking into the list at some point in the future would be Stars of Akarios, formerly known as Starlight. There's so much going on with this game. I really enjoy the space dogfighting combat of it. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how the exploration on the land's going to change and grow. It had kind of a seventh continent vibe to it, Seventh Citadel vibe to it. So Stars of Akarios, you're on my list. You wouldn't qualify anyway, even if I had played a prototype of everything, because it hasn't delivered yet. Has not delivered yet. So we'll see about that. And then the other one that is on my list of one that unless I was totally wrong, this one will make it into my list next time I do one of these lists. And that is Oathsworn. I am so excited for Oathsworn. Deep, deep, deep story. And you totally eschew all of the minion combat. It is just a boss battler. That's it. It's just a boss battler. And you're going to do your story in between to upgrade yourself and get experience, whatever. And then you go fight a big monster. And there's a whole bunch of hidden monsters. You don't know exactly what you're getting. And I love that. I love that it's all going to be different every single time. And I like the idea of this style of game, but I don't have any of them because the themes never were exciting to me. Kingdom Death Monster, it's fine, it's interesting, I've played it, it's fun, but the theme doesn't grab me. Aeon Trespass, giant flesh bag mech suits, nope, not for me. So, but this one, Oathsworn, does have me really excited. So, there you have it, folks. That's a whole bunch of stuff. This is the longest video I've done in a very long time, but there you have 3 games that might sneak into my top 10. You got my top 10, and I named a whole bunch of other games that got considered that didn't quite get in there. Let me know what you think down in the comments. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.